Ας περάσουμε τώρα στο επόμενο μας θέμα που έχει να κάνει με την εκδήλωση που διοργάνωσε το Γραφείο Εκπαίδευσης της Ελληνικής Πρεσβείας στο Λονδίνο, αφιερωμένη στον Κωνσταντίνο Καβάφη. Η εκδήλωση πραγματοποιήθηκε στο Europe House, στο κέντρο του Λονδίνου. Την εκδήλωση με τίτλο «Προσεγγίζοντας τον Καβάφη, μέσα και έξω από την σχολική τάξη» διεύθυνε η συντονίστρια της Ελλαδικής Εκπαιδευτικής Αποστολής, κυρία Βαρβάρα Καμπουρίδου. Στην εκδήλωση παρέθεσε χαιρετισμό ο Πρέσβης της Ελλάδος, κύριος Κωνσταντίνος Μπίκας. Στη συνέχεια ακολούθησαν ομιλίες, απαγγελίες ποιημάτων του Κωνσταντίνου Καβάφη, καθώς και ερμηνεία μελοποιημένων ποιημάτων.
Θα μας βοηθήσουν να κατανοήσουμε το γιατί και το πώς διδάσκεται ο ποιητής στις δύο αυτές χώρες, ενώ οι απαγγελίες και οι μελωδίες θα μας οδηγήσουν στο να νιώσουμε την ποίησή του βαθιά μέσα μας και να στοχαστούμε. Θα χρησιμοποιηθούν και δύο γλώσσες, ελληνική και αγγλική. Στο σημείο αυτό θα ήθελα να ευχαριστήσω από καρδιάς όλους εκείνους που συνετέλεσαν την πραγματοποίηση της σημερινής μας εκδήλωσης. Εισηγητές, ηθοποιούς, μουσικούς, εκπαιδευτικό και διοικητικό προσωπικό του Γραφείου Εκπαίδευσης, τους εράσμους φοιτητές μας, το Hellenic TV και βέβαια την Αγγελική την Πέτριτς, που ως υποδέσποινα μας υποδέχθηκε σήμερα στο Europe House. Να της ευχηθούμε και χρόνια πολλά, γιατί σήμερα, αν το έχουμε ξεχάσει, είναι το Αρχαγγέλιο Μιχαήλ και Γαβρίλ. Και βέβαια την Ευρωπαϊκή Επιτροπή. Κύριε Πρέσβη, θα ήθελα να σας παρακαλέσω να μας απευθύνετε δύο λόγια για τη σημερινή εκδήλωση.
Good evening. I will be short. I think it's an excellent opportunity that we're here to celebrate one of the great poets of the 20th century, Kωνσταντίνος Καβάφη, who, as I understood, coming here, had his roots in British poetry, some of his roots, because he's very original in the British poetry of the 19th, of the Victorian, of the early and mid-Victorian time. I'm delighted to hear our main speaker to speak about Kavafis, and I also want to thank the Europe House and Ms. Petris for this welcome. Χαιρόμαστε πάρα πολύ που είμαστε εδώ. Συγχαίρουμε, we congratulate Ms. Καμπουρίδου for this wonderful initiative that she took to organize this thing. Σας συγχαίρουμε για την πολύ ωραία πρωτοβουλία που πήρατε να οργανώσετε αυτή την συνάντηση, αυτή τη λογοτεχνική γραφεία. Και νομίζω ότι θα πρέπει να προχωρήσουμε στο πρόγραμμα. Ανυπομονούμε όλοι πολύ να ακούσουμε τον ομιλητή μας. Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Θα ήθελα να παρουσιάσω για λίγο τους ηθοποιούς μας, οι οποίοι θα μας συνοδεύσουν σήμερα. Η κυρία Δήμητρα Τζανιδάκη Κρέψ studied classics in Athens and in London, where she completed her PhD. She also trained as an actress at Central and completed her master's in physical theatre. She combines teaching at the University of Reading, funded by the Ministry of Education, with performing in theatre and film. And George Vafakis studied drama at the University of Exeter and then completed his actor training at the Drama Studio London. He has co-founded the Bridge Art Theatre Company, which promotes exciting new writing. Thank you very much for your participation, and I call Mr. Janidaki.
I am not a Greek, I am a Hellen. To be Hellenic is the closest one can get to being godly on earth. And to lose this quality is a kind of a fall from earthly paradise. Far from any paradise lost, Kavafi is the poet's poet. In the Greek anthology of the Center for the Greek Language, some 135 poems were written by some 153 poets from 20 different countries, all inspired by Kavafi's poetry, the so-called Kavafogenic poetry. He was, of course, born in Alexandria, that city so marvelously deprived of the melancholy of ruins, as Marguerite Yourcenar used to say. He died in Alexandria too on the 29th of April, the day of his birthday, on the second floor of a 3-story apartment block in 3 Lipsius Street. Where could I ever have lived better? He said. Underneath me is a brothel that attends to the needs of the flesh. In the corner is the Greek Orthodox Church of St. Saba, which forgives the trespasses of the flesh. And opposite me is a hospital where we will all end up dying. When he won the Nobel Prize for Poetry, Seamus Heaney, the poet laureate, said, "Three were my teachers in poetry, Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Kavafy." And here, to shed his own light on why is Kavafy not a poet of old age, but of future generation, and a poet that is still read in terms of being synchronically, in terms of synchronically produced poetry, is Dr. Anthony Hurst, retired but very well published Kavafist at Queen's Belfast, who is also the editor of the bilingual translation of Sakperoglu of Kavafy's collected poems, and his own translations of Kavafy's poems are forthcoming in the Modern Greek Library of Classic Authors. So I leave you in the safe hands of Dr. Anthony Hurst. Thank you very much for being here.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very grateful for the invitation to speak here this evening. As we've heard, it's the 150th anniversary of the birth of the Alexandrian Greek poet Konstantinos Kavafis, who, when writing in English, as he often did, styled himself C.P. Kavafy. It's also, of course, the 80th anniversary of the poet's death. And here we see his last resting place, in the Greek Orthodox Cemetery of Alexandria. Kavafy fulfilled the biblical lifespan of 80 years and 10, the Evdomikonda Eti of Psalm 89 of the Greek Bible, with unusual precision, dying in the early hours of the morning on his 70th birthday, the 29th of April, 1933. In the first months of 1933, the last months of Kavafy's life, there was probably only one person in the world who would not have been surprised to learn, had such a thing been possible, that in 50, never mind 80 years, Kavafy would be a poet of international renown, translated into more languages than any other Greek writer since classical times. And only one person who would not have been surprised to learn that the 150th anniversary of his birth would be proclaimed the year of Kavafy by the Greek Ministry of Education and Religious Affairs, Culture and Sports. And this would entail hundreds, if not thousands, of events around the world. And of course, that one person was Kavafy. Kavafy's concern for his reputation was well known in Alexandria and Athens, and became the object of satire, as is illustrated in this cartoon by Nikos Papas, which is not, I think, vicious so much as gently teasing. Here we see Kavafy in bed, and we see his bedtime reading, the books lying on the floor. These are volumes about Kavafy by two of his contemporaries, books which in 1926, the date of the cartoon, did not exist, though the two authors whose names can be made out, Stefanos Pargas and Timos Malanos, had already published articles about Kavafy. Kavafy was his own most perceptive critic, and we've direct evidence of his own high estimation of his work. He contributed many anonymous notes to the journal Alexandrian Techni, Alexandrian Art, of which he was the unnamed editor-in-chief, notes in which he discussed his poetry or countered critics, always referring to himself in the third person. But the most interesting example of Kavafy's critical self-promotion appeared not in Alexandrian Techni, but in the Cairo-based French-language weekly of the Greek community in Egypt, La Semaine Égyptienne, in a special edition, an affièρωμένη, devoted to Kavafy, which was published on the 25th of April 1929. The piece appeared as one among many brief appreciations of Kavafy's work. Its named author was Apostolos Leondis, the editor of the Alexandria Greek newspaper Takidromos. But we have the testimony of Mrs. Eftichia Zelita, the manager of the Gramata bookshop in Alexandria, that this short article was dictated in French by Kavafy himself in her bookshop, where Kavafy was a frequent visitor. Here then is part of what Kavafy, behind the mask of Leondis, said about Kavafy. In my opinion, Kavafy is an ultra-modern poet, a poet of future generations. In addition to his historical, psychological and philosophical significance, there is also the sobriety of his impeccable style, which sometimes approaches the laconic. His tempered enthusiasm, which brings with it a kind of cerebral emotion, his precise phrasing, the product of a natural aristocrat, and his delicate irony. These are among the features which will be appreciated even more by future generations, impelled by progress and discovery, and by the subtlety of their mental faculties. The rare poets like Kaváfi will then hold a predominant place in a world which will think a great deal more than we do today. Vanity? Arrogance? Yes, well, of course. But not mere vanity. Had Kaváfi been wrong, had he been forgotten by now, these words would appear to be an example of very foolish vanity. But he was right. His work has been appreciated more and more with each passing decade. He has indeed become a poet of future generations, and we are those future generations now celebrating the year of Kaváfi. The subject of the Shakespearean question, to be or not to be, is Kaváfi's reputation. And whatever Papas may have thought in 1926, the answer we now know is positive. His reputation was indeed to be. It's probably true to say, though, that never has so great a literary reputation been built on so small a body of work. Kaváfi's reputation rests on 154 mainly short poems which he himself kept in circulation, or at least republished in journals, in the last decade of his life. The longest poem, and longest by a wide margin, is 90 lines in length, the shortest just 4 lines long, the average about 15 lines, less than 2,500 lines in total, about 100 printed pages. Of course, there are other poems by Kaváfi, about 140 more. There are the poems that he published before 1904 and later rejected, or at least never republished. There are the poems that he completed but for various reasons chose not to publish. And then there are the 30 unfinished poems which were not published in their entirety until 1994 and are still relatively little known. Here is another cartoon by Nikos Papas. Here we see Kaváfi embarking on a voyage, setting out for Ithaca, perhaps, crowned with laurels, clutching the lyre, symbol of the ancient Greek bards, with a manifesto rolled up under his arm, and the name of the journal he founded, Alexandrini Techni, on the pennant of the ship. A tiny ship. But the principal irony lies in the name of the vessel, Plion Tinian, Tinian ship. For in Kaváfi's poem, In the Harbour Town, the young man who arrives on a Tinian ship, a ship that is from the island of Tinos, has been taken ill on the voyage and dies soon after he's brought ashore. The poem is set in the Roman period in the Greek-speaking province of Syria. The speaker lives in the harbour town in question. And this is the first of several poems I'm going to read in my own English translation, to be followed by a reading of the same poem in the original Greek by our distinguished actors here. In the harbour town. A young man, 28 years old, arrived here in this Syrian harbour town by Tinian ship. Emis by name, his plan had been to learn the perfume trade. But on the voyage he'd fallen ill. Scarcely had he been brought ashore before he died. His funeral of the poorest sort was here. Just hours before his death he'd murmured something about his home and aged parents. But who they were none of us knew, nor where his homeland in the wide Greek world. It's better so, for now, while he lies dead here in this harbour town, his parents can go on thinking that he's living still.
Νέος, 28 ετών, με πλοίον τίμιον, έφτασε εις τούτο των Συριακών επίνιων ο Έμις, με την πρόθεση να μάθει μυροπόλια. Όμως αρρώστησε εις τον πλούν και μόλις απεβιβάστη, πέθανε. Η ταφή του πτωχοτάτη έγινε εδώ. Ο λίγες ώρες πριν πεθάνει κάτι ψιθύρισε για οικίαν, για πολύ γέροντας γονείς, μα ποιοι ήσαν τούτοι δεν εγνώριζε κανείς. Μήτε πια οι πατρίες του μέσα στο μέγα Πανελλήνιον. Καλύτερα. Γιατί έτσι ενώ κοίται νεκρός σε αυτό το ετήνιον, θα τον ελπίζουν πάντα οι γονείς του ζωντανό.
Εδώ να σας αναφέρουμε ότι ολόκληρη την εκδήλωση θα την παρακολουθήσετε προσεχώς στην εκπομπή με το φακό του Hellenic TV.